busy, 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 dead. For a lot of people, that is their life. And it was my life for a long time as well. We're going round and round in circles looking for this elusive best self. We see it on Instagram. Oh, well, that's the version of me that I want to be. And then we chase it. And by the time we've got there, it's gone.
If someone listening to this is fully committed to be happy in their lives, where should they start?
Dr. Andy Cope is a world-renowned positive psychologist, widely known as the happiness doctor. He studies what makes people thrive, from happiness and resilience to performance, and is the best-selling author of The Art of Being Brilliant and creator of the Spy Dog children's book series.
Have we created an environment that is not conducive to human well-being? It's almost like harder, I think, to be happy now than it has been for a long time. But within the craziness out there, we'd have to go crazy in here. There are things that we can take charge of, mostly our thought processes and our daily habits.
Buy these trousers to be happy. It's an unconscious decision. We unconsciously think it will make us happy. But logically, I'm pretty sure everyone knows those trousers won't make you happy.
Those trousers won't make you happy, no.
What would you advise me and my audience to be able to be more present?
The ultimate top happiness tip ever is...
Andy, who are you? And what do you do?
I call myself a doctor of happiness, which I know sounds a little bit cheesy and a little bit... but I mean, it's better than Dr. Feelgood, which is the alternative to that. So basically what I am is I'm a positive psychology researcher. So we'll get into that in a minute, I'm sure. But that flips psychology on its head away from illness towards wellness. So I try to look away from what's wrong with people to what's right with people. So human flourishing, basically. So I got a PhD out of Loughborough University about 15 years ago now, and I didn't know I was going to be on podcasts or writing books or doing keynotes on it, but that's what my life has now become, is a speaker and author on human flourishing. Happiness, at the heart of it all is happiness.
The happiness doctor, I love that. We need more happiness doctors.
Well, honestly, I think happiness is the goal of all your other goals. Right, so everybody is working super. We've just been talking off air about working super hard, and everybody's sort of close to burnout. But they're doing that because they're seeking something. They're trying to get somewhere, and what they're really wanting is happiness.
And as a psychologist, when did you realize that you wanted to become a happiness doctor and not any other type of doctor?
Accidentally, really. I call myself an accidental author and an accidental doctor. I never set out. I mean, I studied, like all the other psychologists, traditional psychology. So if you get psychology now is 150 years old as a subject, and it's always been about illness. So every lecture I ever attended as a psychology student, phobia, it was named after an illness: phobias, disorders, anxiety, depression, paranoia, schizophrenia, burnout, trauma. So what we would do is we would learn about what was wrong with people, which was really useful, because then once you've got a diagnosis, you can help them. Here's some therapy, here's some counselling, here's some medication. So you got 150 years of applying that model to a population. And that was great. I've got no problem with that. I think that's super useful. However, everybody watching or listening to this, if you think about the last 15 years, despite the best efforts of psychology, that's the best therapy, the best counselling, the best medication that we can come up with, the truth is, the lived experience of most people, is that mental health is getting worse, not better. So it seemed to me about 15 years ago that we're missing something. What are we doing wrong? If we're working super hard to try and fix people, there now literally are too many people to fix. Right, personally, but if anybody watching this, if you've got a teenage daughter with mental health issues, you try getting an appointment and it'll be 2 years because there are so many people now needing help. So it got me thinking about, okay, so what are we missing? There must be something obvious that we're missing somewhere. And what I realized is almost for the entirety of traditional psychology, 150 years, we've almost never ever studied people who are already happy. Okay, which makes me smile, because think about everybody watching this. You can all think of in your life, I bet, a handful of people, probably a single handful of people in your life who've got something extra. Right? People like yourself, who've got an energy, they've got a passion, they've got a smile on their face. They seem to love Mondays like everybody else loves Fridays. In the workplace, these are work colleagues who go the extra mile. You don't need to ask 10 times. It's built into them. They create strong relationships. They rock up at a meeting with an open mind and a willingness to, well, shall we try it? Where everybody says, that'll never work. So who are these people with this extra energy, this passion, this love of life? Because we've literally I mean, we're in London today doing this on the tube. There's not many of those on the tube today. You know, not many people with everybody sitting there with headphones on and just, you know, the world's not a very happy place at the moment. So positive psychology, I'm not suggesting I invented it. It came out of the US in the late 90s, but I jumped all over it at Loughborough Uni. So what I set out to do in my PhD, who are the people who are already feeling amazing? What are they doing that allows them to feel amazing? And thirdly, that I think hopefully we'll unpick a little bit here is, what might we then learn from them that we could apply to the wider population? Well, we could apply to ourselves, actually, so we might also fall back in love with Mondays.
Lovely. I love this conversation and this topic. And before we deep dive into the ramifications of why we're happy, what makes us happy, unhappy, I'd like to start from the most basic question, but perhaps the toughest question. What is happiness?
What is happiness? Oh, I love the little pause before you asked. I knew it was coming. It's a really difficult... It took me... First of all, I need to make a claim here. It took me 10 years to get a PhD, all right? It's just a long, long time. And it took a long time because I spent an awful lot of time trying to work out what to study. Because happiness... Most psychologists don't study happiness. Happiness is seen as a bit woo-woo, a bit too simple, a bit too easy. So psychologists wrap it up in subjective well-being or positive affect. They will call it something different. Whereas I fought really hard with my supervisors to actually just study happiness. Now, what is it? Happiness is really hard to define, but essentially, if you keep it super simple, it's just a feeling. That's all it is. It's an emotion. There's 1,000 emotions out there, and happiness is one that we want more of the time. It's the one that most people want more of. But of course, happiness, there's a whole, if you describe happiness, there's a continuum of happiness, a whole range of happiness emotions. So at the strong end, it's like joy and woohoo, that's happiness, you know? The wedding, the 21st birthday happiness, the partying all night happiness. There is that, but that's high energy, and I can't do that now at my age. But so happiness is all the way from there down to this beautiful quiet end here, which is contentment. Which is kind of, again, what we were talking about off screen, really, about being at peace with who you are and what you've got and your life. And I think that, so happiness for me is all of those things. It's that whole range of emotions. But I think the secret sauce really is down at this end, is this quiet contentment, this mindfulness, being peaceful, happy in this very moment, because this moment's all we've got. That's another thing we might go into later.
Yeah. I was, to be honest, I was not expecting that answer because, and please, I'd like to get your take on this. So the way I was viewing happiness through those two different examples, so the short-term happiness, which is that night out or that birthday celebration, versus the long-term contentment and quiet happiness feeling feels more long-term. So for me, it was a difference in between having fun and pleasure versus happiness. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people confused both.
Yeah, they do. I mean, if we go back to the ancient Greeks, they talked about hedonism. So hedonistic happiness is instant happiness. It's some pints of beer. It's a pair of new shoes. It's a night out. So we can get happy quickly.
Dopamine.
And everybody can get a big bar of chocolate, a glass of wine. We're instantly happy. But that's not really sustainable. So I think it was Aristotle who spoke about, so that's hedonistic, but then there was eudaimonia, which is this sort of quite a complicated word, but that's this long-term happiness. It's a slow burn. It's the good life. It's the contented life. And I think that maybe in the modern world, we find ourselves looking on Instagram and people thinking that we need to be happy all the time. Maybe this is a problem with the modern world, is we're led to believe, I think, that if we're not happy, that we've got a problem. And therefore because everybody else on Instagram seems to be happy and they're happier than us, and therefore we get really anxious about not being happy. Whereas, of course, the truth is nobody's happy all of the time. Again, off air, we spoke about football, right? I support a team called Derby County, and it's really hard to be happy at 5 o'clock on a Saturday when you support a team that isn't Real Madrid. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So I think that I wouldn't want to be happy all the time if you think about it. In fact, I used to do a lot of work in schools. I used to ask school children, give them this challenge. If there was a pill here, right? So these kids are 10 years old. You could take this one pill and you will be happy forever. You would never have to feel sadness again. Would you take the pill? And first of all, the kids are like, oh, yeah, give me the pill, I'd take the pill. And then after a minute, one kid would say, but what about if my grandma dies? Or what about if I fail an exam? And so gradually the kids begin to realize that happiness isn't what we want all of the time. We want it more of the time, and we can learn to feel it more of the time, but we certainly don't want it all of the time. So I don't think, in fact, you can be overly happy as well. I don't know if you want to talk about sort of, there's so many things that are going through my head that we could talk about. I'll wait for your questions. I won't prompt them. But you can be too happy. Let me just mention it while it's in my head. So toxic positivity. So I'm not, as a doctor of happiness, people say, first question, I bet you're always happy then, aren't you? And of course, no, I'm not always happy. I'm happy very often. I'm happy quite often, but not all of the time. But you can be too happy. We all probably know a couple of people in our life who are sort of faking it or pretending to be happy, or, the jazz hands on a Monday is too far. It's like, woohoo! That's not real. Certainly not in the UK. That's not true happiness. I'm talking about genuine, authentic, feeling happy more of the time. That's what positive psychology studies, and also gives you some clues to how to achieve that.
I think you've mentioned something that I personally believe is quite critical, and although you've mentioned it, I would like for you to reinforce that message again, so our community, our audience really, really hears that in very simple terms. So I think a lot of people, and I include myself in that basket, our life's purpose, our life's goal, the ultimate goal is to be happy. Yeah. And it's almost like you want to achieve that feeling and stay in that feeling. But what you're saying is it can't be like that. So you're going to be happy and unhappy. And the reason why you know happiness is because you have experienced unhappiness.
Yes.
So we should not be seeking forever happiness.
No. I think we're back to that contentment that we started with. I think that's a nice place. You can get to learn to feel that a lot more of the time. But I think it's okay to not be okay. I think that's the truth of it. As a doctor of happiness, it's okay to sometimes not be happy. But I think it's this learned behaviours. What I was genuinely looking for at Loughborough was what I call intentional strategies. So my PhD really was about it's less about what's going on outside of you, less about your external world, and more about what your intentional strategies are, the things that you can take charge of within the maelstrom, the craziness of the world at the moment, because it's, I don't know when people are watching this or listening to this, but wow, what is the world doing to itself, right? Yeah. It's in a really difficult situation, difficult place at the moment. It's almost like harder, I think, to be happy now than it has been for a long time. But within the craziness out there, we'd have to go crazy in here. There are things that we can take charge of, mostly our thought processes and our habits, our daily habits.
I'd like to talk about the components that make up our long-term and quieter happiness, because I believe that many of us can relate to the short-term happiness and how we can induce that happiness, as you've mentioned. Yeah. Chocolate, a night out, perhaps having sex. Yeah. But it is harder to pinpoint what are the factors that contribute towards that quiet long-term happiness.
Yeah, well, quite so often that is foregoing the instant happiness. So you actually have to maybe, because chocolate every night or a glass of wine every night isn't going to be good for your long-term contentment. You might not even be here long-term if you're doing that. You know what I mean? So I think looking after your physical health and this kind of eat, move, sleep, getting the basics of your physiological molecules right in the first place. But the long-term stuff comes really from a set of learned behaviours around. I've been kind of binge listening to the podcast since I knew I was going to be on it. And I don't want to repeat too much of what's been already said, but some of the most obvious things around happiness are around gratitude and around mindfulness. I'd really like to kind of maybe touch on that in a few minutes. And around being in this moment we're all, if I'm allowed to say the word, we're all what we call masturbating with a U, so I can say it. So masturbation is when you turn things you think you'd like to have into things you must have. So every Instagram post and every advert on the TV is designed to make you unhappy or uncomfortable or anxious with, it's not good enough. So I need the product to be happy. I need to have some cosmetic surgery to be happy. I need the glass of wine to be happy. And I think that what we're really doing is we're chasing. I mean, I drive all over the UK, to various events, and I keep driving past these huge self-storage warehouses. They're all over now, yeah? And every time I drive past one of those, I think, I do a double take, because I think that what we have now done is we've accumulated so many possessions that have failed to make us happy, that we're now renting somewhere to put them, to create some space at home, So we can buy some more stuff that's ultimately going to fail to make us happy. So we're all masturbating, we're all chasing the next thing. Whereas really what I'm talking about is, really gratitude really is one of the key things about happiness, is just learning to be comfortable and happy with what you've already got. If you want to chase more, fantastic. But before you do that, just look at where you already are and what you've already got, and just be peaceful with that and be grateful for that. So it's the small little wins there, I think, that are kind of obvious, but I'm not the first one to tell you that. But it's, despite us telling audiences, they still chase more, pursue more, want to be, get the next thing. But we're drowning in glut. We've got so much stuff. People are renting places to store their stuff.
So
crazy.
I think we've heard multiple times that money doesn't buy happiness. What is money when it comes to happiness? Do we need it? Do we not need it?
We do. Well, money's really important. If you didn't have any money, so again, back to some of my sessions that I run, I give people a choice of five things, right? And you put these in order: money, health, relationships, happiness, and success. So being those on a big PowerPoint. So money, health, relationships, happiness, and success. What would be your 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 running order? And quite often people put money towards the bottom of that. But if you ask in schools, young children tend to put, teenagers particularly will put money at the top. I need the money, sir. Give me the money. I'll buy the success. I'll buy the relationships. I'll buy the happiness. And as you get a bit older, you begin to realize it doesn't really work like that. Now, money is important. And if you didn't have any money, money would be your top priority. But everybody listening to this, these people who are drawn to this podcast are people who I think are driven to just want to be their best self. Yeah, it's that small improvements they can make to either at work or at home, this fabled best self that we're all looking for. And I think probably money isn't the number one issue for your listeners, but maybe health and relationships and success and happiness will be. But I will put happiness at the top of that list, because what you can prove over a lifetime of doing positive psychology is that happiness is the starting point for all those other things. So happy people tend to achieve more, they get promoted quicker, they achieve more success. Happy people tend to take more risks, which is basically what you've done. Entrepreneur, you kind of go for things. Happy people tend to create stronger relationships, and happy people tend to earn more money. So it's a bit like dominoes. If happiness is the first domino to go, and if you were happier, all those other things will become easier to come by. So, but most people put happiness at the end. They think that happiness will be the end point of when I have a relationship, then I'll be happy. When I earn the money, then I'll be happy. But actually, counterintuitively, I know people struggle with this, but it's the starting point. So if we could learn to be happier now, then actually success will follow from that.
That is, I can relate to that profoundly. Myself, so many of my friends, for so many years, we used to quietly share with each other that once I achieve that, I'll be happy. Once I get, I open that business in my case, or my friends get that promotion, or buy the house, or get the car, or get the girl, everything will make sense. I will be enough. And then you achieve it.
Yeah.
And it's
fleeting. It's very fleeting. It goes. It
doesn't
comes and it
feel
goes.
like you imagined, and it doesn't feel that void.
It's called destination addiction. So destination addiction is basically this. Happiness is this pot of gold at the end of the rainbow that we're chasing it all the time, and we learn it from little kids, right? So when your kids go to primary school, if you work really hard in primary school, you'll get really good SATs results. When you get those great results, guess what? Then you'll be happy. Then you go to big school and you work super hard, you'll get great exam results, then you'll be happy. Then you'll have a job, you'll have a sales target, hit your sales target, then you'll be happy. Or you'll be happy when you meet your perfect partner and walk down the aisle and get married. And we're all chasing that fantastic pot of emotional gold called happiness at the end of the rainbow. Happiness is something I've got to earn, I've got to pursue it, I've got to chase it and make it mine. Whereas really what I'm saying is happiness is the starting point. What if that's a big mis-selling scandal and happiness actually is at this end of the rainbow? So if we go back through the examples, what if it's the happiest kids that get the best results? So if you were happy, you learn more, you rock up at school with an open mind, you put your hand up more often, you do your homework better. What if it's the happiest salesperson that gets the most sales? Because it will be. Yeah. What if being happy now is the key to finding your perfect partner and walking down the aisle? So actually, what if the big thought really that we're pursuing here is, in terms of the happiness rainbow, what if we're looking for happiness at the wrong end of the rainbow? Right? And if we could bring it back now, and it's slightly controversially, but what if happiness is already here? It's already right where we are right now, but we're so busy looking for it somewhere else that we're missing it. We're back to this moment again. We're missing it in the only moment there ever is, which is the present moment.
So if through our upbringing we've been nurtured to feel like happiness is something that we need to earn. For many parents right now that are listening to this, what would you advise them for them to not make that mistake and help their kids become or have a healthy relationship with happiness?
We could spend a whole hour talking about parenting in children. Let me give an example. Let me give you an example of most of the habits that you pass on to your children. They're caught, not taught, which means that kids just catch things off mum and dad. So you don't formally teach them; they just look at you and they learn. Give you an example of that, right? So the average lifespan is 4,000 weeks, which just terrifies me. I'm just about to become 60 years old. 4,000 weeks is, if I announce that in a primary school, the kids are like, oh, 4,000 weeks, that's like forever, fantastic. I announce it in a corporate keynote and, whoa, it's not so many weeks. I've used a few. But let's go back to when I was, say, 5 years old and about to start school. So my dad, when you're 5, your parents are your hero. So my dad's my hero. And I look at my dad. I tell you what never happened in my house. My dad never pulled me aside and sat me down and had this discussion and said, right, little Andy, sit down. Tomorrow you start in school. What you need to know is that Mondays, they're terrible. Nobody likes Mondays, absolutely awful. Tuesday, not much better, really. Tuesday's no man's land. Wednesday morning, a bit grim. Then it starts to go downhill so it's a bit easier. Wednesday afternoon, a bit better. Thursday's a bit better than Wednesday. Now, Friday, mate, little Andy, 5-year-old. Friday, you go to school, I go to work. But actually, it's an early finish, and so Fridays are okay. Now, Saturday, best day of the week, because you don't go to school, I don't go to work. We'll have lots of fun on a Saturday. And Sunday, they're all right till about 6 o'clock at night, and then you'll start getting anxious about school. I start getting worried about Monday. And what you're going to do that about 4,000 times, and then you're going to die. All right? So that conversation never happened in my house because we didn't need to, because my dad's my hero. And he would leave the house on a Monday like, oh, off we go to work. And he would come back in on a Friday. Yay, it's Friday. And I'm 5 years old. And he's my hero. He's subconsciously teaching me the rules that Mondays are bad and Fridays are good. And that's just one little example of parenting where your habits will seep into your children. So remember, it's caught, not taught. So, and the other one, I think, so role modeling what actually a positive, upbeat, vibrant, passionate human being actually looks like consistently, right? So being that best version of you. And the other one that I really like in terms of children and grandchildren is you should praise them for effort, not talent. Which is, I'm not sure how many people know this, but I think it's really powerful. So this is Carol Dweck's research on growth mindset. So apparently children who are praised for talent, just when the going gets tough, they just give up really easily. Where if you're praised for your effort, then kids, when the going gets tough, which plot spoiler, it will do at some point, children will persevere. So if you give an example, if you're watching your children or your daughter play football on a Saturday morning for her team and she puts a ball in the top corner from the edge of the area, what you shouldn't say is a goal of the season. It's a worldie. What you shouldn't say after the game is, oh my gosh, you're the next Ronaldo, you're the next Lionel Messi, you are born to play football. What you should say to your daughter is, that's what Thursday night practice gets you. That's what rocking up every Thursday, playing your heart out at training, that's how good you get. Similarly, if your son comes home from school with a picture and it's a brilliant picture from art, you shouldn't say, oh my gosh, you're the next Picasso, you're going to be an artist, you are born to be an artist. You just should say, wow, that's what all that practice, that effort gets you, is great pictures. So all the time we're praising for effort rather than talent. So I think that's two things for parents, right? Really role model what somebody who falls in love with life actually looks like. So you're not faking it, you're genuinely in that zone, and praising your children for effort rather than talent.
I feel like for the dad or mom to be able to do that, either they need to fake it because they don't feel great with the Monday morning because they don't love their job, or they need to feel it because they love their job or their business. They need to be purposeful. How much does our job, our professional life, matter when it comes to our happiness?
It does matter. I mean, again, not my research, but there's lots of research into whether you're doing a job, a career, or a calling. So if you're doing a job, well, you've probably done all three. I've done all three. So a job tends to be something that's paid reasonably low pay. It's an hourly thing. You rock up because you need the money, right? A career tends to be something that's got some long-term progression. So your salary will go up and you feel invested in, you get paid for holidays, and it's a bit more, you feel like you might be getting somewhere. But a calling is something you wouldn't tell the boss, but you do it for free because you feel drawn to it. And quite often things like the health service and doctors and nurses, and they're not in it for the money, they're in it because it is what they genuinely feel driven to do. And I think there's only about 18% of people who are actually doing a calling. So there's 18% of people
in the planet.
That's off the top of my head. That might not be quite right, but not enough people are drawn to. But if you're doing your calling, it doesn't matter if it's a Monday morning or if it's a drizzly day. You're living your purpose, and therefore you're much more likely to rock up with that spring in your step most days of the week. Yeah. So if you're not doing your calling, if you're stuck in a job, and I've done jobs in the past that I've had to do to earn the money to pay the weekly rent or whatever. And some people get stuck there forever. So I think if you're stuck there, then the progression out of that is to work out what your calling actually is and then work out a route into that. And again, it sounds like a cliche, but that's when work doesn't feel like work. Yeah. So trying to engineer, which is what you said again off air. You said you're unemployable. You don't want a job by somebody else telling you what to do. So you've created this life, this set of businesses that allow you to. Well, I'm guessing that's your calling. I'm guessing that's what you set out to do.
I want to go back to the money question because I feel like work and money, as you mentioned, they are very much related, whether it's a job, whether it's a career, maybe not so much in the calling aspect, but I've read an article, and this was a few years ago, so maybe we would need to adjust this to inflation and so on. But I think it was in the UK, if you earn about £75,000 a year, anything on top of that, you're living on bonus land, but it will not add an additional unit of happiness. So every extra pound will not give you an extra additional unit of happiness. Yeah,
it seems counterintuitive. I'm not sure what the modern, it's around about £75,000. So whether you earn 75 grand or 7.5 million, theoretically doesn't make a great deal of difference to your happiness, which even I can't get my head around that, right? Because you would think, surely. But actually, what you'll find is like a really big salary brings additional pressure and additional stress anyway. So money can't buy you happiness, but it can buy choice, and it can buy peace, and it can buy security, actually. So it's helpful in that respect, but it can't buy happiness. So happiness is much less correlated with the job that you do, and much more, if you did meta-analysis, which is analysis of all the analysis that's ever been done, then it would be close personal relationships that would be the number one thing that would allow you to be happy. So you can be under £75,000, but in a really beautiful, tight-knit family with the person you love, and you will feel like a millionaire.
Let's talk about those close personal relationships. So what are they made up of? So are we talking about parents, close friends, romantic relationships, and how do we need to nurture them?
Yeah, well, there's something called Dunbar's number. So Dunbar's number basically means, again, it's off the top of my head without the research in front of me, but something like you will spend about 40% of everybody watching this, you'll spend about 40% of your life with about a close circle of 6 to 8 people. So these are absolute core family and friends. A very small number of people, you can spend 40% of your life with them. And there's another slightly wider circle of another 6 to 8 people that you spend another 20% of your life with. So Dunbar's number basically means that you will spend about 60% of your life with about 12 people, right? Which again is like, wow, right? Now, therefore, your happiness and their happiness, your well-being and their well-being, is much more closely correlated with close personal relationships with what I call your dearest dozen, your 12 people. And you'll be able to know who they are straight away, your really closest family and friends. But of course, what the modern world is really, so investing there, right? Investing in those people, if you're going to be in the room with them, be in the room with them. Get off your phone and be there with them fully. But of course, what the modern world does is encourages to chase people beyond there. We're chasing 10,000 followers who we don't even know, or 50,000 friends on Instagram who are they're not friends, yeah, they're followers. But so all the time we are led, we're masturbating really about wanting more followers, and we're chasing people way outside of our 12 to 15 people. So my message is get back to your inner core and invest time and time there.
And how can we develop and nurture and maintain those relationships in a way that is contributing towards our happiness? Because when I was thinking about my 12 people, some of those are by choice, right? So I've chosen them based on their characters, and I feel like it's like a puzzle, right? Their characters and their lifestyles, they match with mine. So it feels like effortless, and me spending time with them feels fantastic. But some others, I love them dearly. They're family members. So how definitely it seems that happiness, or the contribution towards happiness, it depends on how much time you spend with these 12 people. So time is really the key factor here. So if I'm still bound to spend so much time with these 6 or 5 other relatives that not necessarily have similar traits or personalities to me, how can I work with them so it provides the maximum happiness?
Yeah, well said. Well, you've said that beautifully, because I think I know what you're really saying. Well, I hear it all the time where people are saying, actually, the really not difficult people, but the people, close family sometimes can be, and you haven't got a choice. They're family, they're close family. You can spend a lot of time with them. I think this is more about how it's not about them. Because I spent ages trying to work out how I should be with people who aren't positive, right? Because I in my early days of being a positive psychology, I thought I'm going to be super positive with everybody, and then everybody will respond. And of course, those people who aren't necessarily, they're not depressed or anxious, but not everybody's demonstratively positive. And so I was trying to be overly positive with people who aren't very positive, and it was just annoying them. Okay, we're back to being overly, there's an old English word, a grinagog. A grinagog is, back to the 17th century word, is somebody who's so happy you want to punch them on the nose. So I think I was becoming a grinagog with people who aren't naturally happy, and I was trying to make them happy. And I think letting go of that responsibility, that's not my job. My job isn't to, I mean, there are things you can do to influence people, but you can't make anybody else happy. And I think we have to find, in positive psychology, the intentional strategies that I spoke about earlier, about what we can do to create stronger relationships. It's not being happy all the time. And if people have had a bad day at home, me going home through the door being overly positive is not really what they need. They need me to be, emotional intelligence tells us that we need to find a way of connecting with that person at their level. So sometimes it's okay to bring yourself down to a level, work with them, and then to maybe raise them back up again.
And if someone listening to this, after counting these 12 people in their lives, they realize that 2 or 3 of them, unfortunately, they've drained their energy, but they need to be with them. And they've tried so many things to change their relationship with them. They may be thinking that they need to cut some time with them and maybe replace these people within their inner circle. Would you advise them to do that so they become happier?
If it's close family, no. I mean, close family, and you've got to spend some time with them. The challenge, I think, with people, I used to call them mood hoovers, right? So we've all got them in our lives. In fact, that's a global phrase. It'll translate, right? So mood hoovers are people who you can get stuck in just going through the motions and being a slightly gloomy, doomy, the weather's bad, the traffic's bad. And the world is doing this to us, right? And I spent 40 years in what I call the curse of mediocrity, which was just a very average version of me. The town I grew up in, which I love dearly, but if I stop 100 people in my hometown and say, how are you? The response will be, well, I'm not too bad considering, or mustn't grumble, or I'm living the dream, is what people, but in that tone of voice. Yeah, so I did that as well for 40 years. I just thought that's what you had to do. So I think it's raising yourself out of that. So the mood hoovers are people like I used to be, who are stuck in habits of negativity that just drain the happiness out of everybody else. So in my research, I spoke about, I put people onto a graph of well-being, right? And you'll love this, right? Because you'll be at the top of it. But if we measured everybody's happiness in the workplace, then what I found was that far too many people get stuck in this bottom third of the graph. So people are paid a salary to be at work, but they'd rather, if you didn't pay them, they wouldn't be there. They'd rather be on the golf course or on holiday. So what happens is most people in the workplace get sucked into this slightly low level of, is it home time yet? Is it Friday afternoon yet? Which is fine. I did that for 40 years as well. It's not depression, it's not anxiety, it's not sadness, but you can get stuck in being mediocre, the average version of you. What I was interested in on my graph of happiness was there's a small percentage of the people at the top that I nicknamed the 2%ers. So about 2% of the population, when you put them on the graph, they're right at the top. They're statistically significantly happier, statistically significantly more energy, which is interesting, right? So nearly 35% more energy when you're at the top of that graph. So what I was interested in is psychology spent for 150 years looking at the people who fall out the bottom of the graph into depression, anxiety, and where they need help. And what psychology does, they work with people who are really, really in a bad place to get them back in to not being ill, back into where they started. Whereas I'm much more interested in, well, who are at the top of the diagram? Who are the ones who are flourishing? Who are the ones with the aliveness and the passion, the positivity? And what I was looking at is the 2%ers. Who are they? What are they doing? And what can we learn from them so we can move that way? Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that you have to be in that top 2% all of the time. But what positive psychology does is give you strategies to live there more of the time. And if you're there, if you can be there without being over the top and jazz hands and faking it, if you can genuinely be in love with life, then what you will do is influence people and you will gradually move people towards the top. You will improve their well-being as well.
And those 2%ers, are they there out of a consequence of nature or nurture?
Nature or nurture? A bit of a mix. I would think mostly it's learned behaviors though. So I looked at their parenting. It was not a massive big deal. In a PhD, you can't look at everything. If you went back, you'd look at things differently. But I looked at, there wasn't a massive correlation. So some of the 2%ers had mood hoover parents, but they'd use that negativity to say, oh, well, I don't want to be like that. So they'd use that to say, so I'm going to be different from mum and dad. But quite a few of the 2%ers did have parents who were really positive and really super positive. So it's quite a learned, they learned it early on, I think, overall. But the issue, again, with learning behaviors is quite often we've got so many habits grooved into our heads that we have to unlearn those first. And if you've got 40 years of negativity grooved in, that doesn't just change in one day. Right? You've got to work super hard at getting into good habits because you've got to unlearn that first before the new habits and pathways get grooved in. So I had 40 years of unlearning, and human beings, we're really bad at unlearning. We're super good at learning new stuff. Give your listeners 10 things to do and they can do them, but it doesn't make any difference if you've still got the old habits ingrained. So unlearning that's the hard part.
Before we talk about the unlearning and all the different tips and solutions that you'd recommend us to become happier, I'd like to talk about the brain. So what's happening in our brains and what's happening from a neurochemical point of view when we feel happy?
What's happening is, it's not my area of expertise, but basically when you're feeling happy, a different set of chemicals will pump around your body. It's almost as simple as that. So the endorphins and all the feel-good factors pump around your body. And what that does is that makes you more, actually, interestingly, it makes, if something painful happens, so you get stung by a nettle, it hurts less if you're happy. And it hurts more if you're not. So pain, it affects so many aspects of your life. But there's something by Barbara Fredrickson called Broaden and Build. And I like Broaden and Build because basically what it says that when you're in that 2% mode that I spoke about at the top of the wellbeing graph, so you put these behaviors into play, then actually your brain switches on. So let me do it the opposite way. So when you're not in a good place, when you're at the bottom of the well-being diagram, stuck in that low-level grumbling, I used to call it irritable bastard syndrome, if I'm allowed to use that. But there's a lot of it out there, on the tube in London. There's a lot of people looking pretty angry about life. And that's highly infectious. One person in your team gets that, then everybody's got this IBS, everybody's grumbling about the world. But when you're stuck in that bottom third, your brain will literally narrow down and will only be able to look at the problems. So you literally get this single-minded focus. You look at the weather, you look at the politics, you look at your job, and everything seems really bad. Okay, you don't think creatively, you don't think about, you just like stuck in this mire. When you're in that 2% that I said earlier, Broaden and Build basically says that when you're there, your brain, literally, what happens in your brain, it literally lights up with possibilities. It begins to see opportunities up here that you can't see when your brain is stuck in that bump. So you're seeing, well, we could try this, I could do that, maybe try this. You become creative, you become solution focused. And actually, the world looks differently when your brain is, because your brain can see a future, whereas down here it's like, oh, it's just a bit rubbish. So actually, Broaden and Build, I think, is really good. That's almost the evolutionary purpose of happiness, is for us to be able to see a bright future and go for it.
And does the definition and the feeling of happiness evolve over time? So the 20-year-old version of myself would have a different definition and feeling.
Yeah, well, that's interesting. Yeah, again, it's a really interesting one. I mean, I've got a 1.5-year-old granddaughter now who is just permanently wired for happiness and joy. You know, that end of the spectrum of like, wow, everything is new and novel. She's not learned that Mondays are bad. I'm not teaching her. I'm never going to teach her that, right? I'm going to be really careful. Because everything is new, she'll jump in every single puddle going. But you look at the adults walking on the streets, we walk around the puddles. She's through the puddles, in them, jumping like that, right? And so we have this, from about 0 to about 7, this unbridled joy of life. Then between about 7, I think maybe 9 actually, 9 and 11, your brain becomes a bit more sophisticated and you start to have opinions and you make judgments about people, which is okay for a little while until you realize that those people are also making value judgments about you. And as soon as you realize that, that's called self-consciousness, and you start to hide. You go in, instead of being the jumping in puddles, chasing the ducks in the park version of us that we all truly are. We all start out like that with joy. We start to become the person we think we need to be to fit into society, which is different. That's why teenagers, they start to fit in. They don't jump in puddles anymore. They'll have the same haircut as their mates. They listen to the same music as their mates. They become part of a tribe, part of a clan. And therefore, what happiness changes there. And then happiness has got a big dip about where I am in late 50s. There's a U shape where we get to a point, most people will get to a point in their mid-50s where they've worked hard, got a senior position in an organisation with a lot of pressure, and they've got children maybe still at home, they're looking after, and maybe ill parents or grandparents. So all these responsibilities come between 50 and 60. So there's a big dip in happiness globally between the 50s and 60s. And then in retirement, it should come back again. So there's all these peaks and troughs and dips. But I think truly, my little granddaughter is proof that we all start out happy. And then the world does its thing.
I have a bizarre and strange question, but are there any studies that reveal if people with kids, with children, versus people without children are happier or less happy?
Happier, generally, yeah, it's because it's part of your 12 people, I think. Happier generally, although I think in the early years, the sleep deprivation, again, I can think of a graph, I'm not going to draw graphs, but in my head, there is a dip immediately. When you're a new parent, I'm sure you'll have this to come one day, but there's this dip for about a year where you get no sleep, right? And the graph goes down, but it does it should pay back. The kids should pay back later. Yeah.
So sleep is very important.
Sleep is important. I know you've done sessions on sleep before, and I'm not a sleep expert, but I do think that a big part of my happiness comes from looking after myself physically, and that includes sleep. And we're so sleep deprived now, it's crazy. Like we're busy leading such busy lives that the first thing that we give up on is sleep. We sleep cheat. And I think if you can just get your regular 8 hours, then that makes you. If there's just one habit that you could change, it would just be get to bed an hour earlier.
And what about other habits like eating, drinking alcohol?
Yeah, I think eat, move, sleep, again, in not key areas of my expertise, but I think everybody's clever enough to understand that actually they're the basics. If you're not feeling great physiologically, if you're eating the wrong foods, and if you're not getting any sleep and you're drinking too much alcohol, then you're just going to not feel great anyway. So I think I almost think it's almost harming yourself by eating the wrong foods. But again, the modern world, there's this, I don't know if you've heard the word zoocosis. I've got a book coming out in the summer that zoocosis is quite a big part of it. So if give an example, I took my kids to a zoo many years ago now, And the kids didn't notice, but I noticed the animals behaving strangely. So the elephants were rocking, and the monkey, the big silverback, had scratched himself. He was bleeding, and the bears had paced up and down so much there was a path in the concrete in there. So I noticed all these animals behaving strangely, and I googled it. And when I got home, and the word zoocosis. So zoocosis basically means that the animals, and actually animals in zoos, quite often they're medicated. So they medicated the elephants and they medicated the bears. So they're medicating the animals to make them feel better, but actually it's not a medical problem. The problem with the animals is they're in captivity. If you put the bears back into the Ural Mountains, they'd be fine, but they're locked up. So actually all these weird behaviors come from the environment, and we're medicating the animals. There's a big thought coming in a minute, right? We're medicating the animals for a non-medical problem. Now, my question here is, have we created human zoocosis? Wow. Have we created an environment, just walking through London right now, created an environment that is not conducive to human well-being, right? Are we eating the wrong foods? If there's a fast food chain every 10 yards, there's alcohol on everywhere. There's everybody, if we're 5.5 hours now scrolling on, our teenagers 5.5 hours scrolling, that's not good for anybody's health. So are we actually medicating for a non-medical problem? And I've probably got some people really angry with this. We talk about ADHD and people who've got ADHD. My thing is, I'm beginning to think that maybe society's got ADHD. We've created an environment that is actually messing with our heads.
Wow. I mean,
So therefore, learning to flourish in that crazy world, that's where positive psychology becomes really important. Sorry. Yeah.
No, but I was analyzing my life and the life of the people around me, and I agree. It seems like societies or the world's priority number one is economics.
Yeah.
So economics mean economic growth, which is led by consumerism, which means they need to sell more of whatever it is, whether they are digital experiences like through social media or consumer goods and services. And if we're consuming many of these things, then by default, we're constantly being stimulated, and that's our precondition for us to feel happy. And we are constantly being pushed towards the short-term definition of happiness, and we're not allowed or being able to unlock the long-term definition of happiness.
Yeah.
This is my analogy, or
That's
my
beautifully
assessment.
analysed. That's beautifully analysed. Yeah, I think that we are super busy doing the wrong things. Yeah, that the modern world, as you've said, that the modern world has made it so easy to get into bad habits, which is, we're back to zoocosis. Are we medicating, I better not say where, but I was in a school in the north of England, and they said that in their year 5, so what, they take kids who are 9 or 10 years old, three quarters of their kids in their school have got some sort of diagnosis for some sort of disorder. 3/4? So it's almost like unusual not to have a diagnosis now. So either there's something going on in that town that's causing people to be messed up, or there's something bigger going on in society. And I think, have we accidentally created a society that's zoocosis, that's messing with our heads, or has it been deliberate? There's another, as the pendulum swung so far towards materialism, we are chasing things. And if we live in a consumer society where we think that having more stuff will make us happy, then it makes sense to chase more stuff. And I think the vast majority of people do think that having more stuff will make us happy. So they're masturbating, they're chasing this more stuff. Whereas really where I'm coming back is, we're back to peace and contentment and gratitude and looking at what you've already got and learning to be happy with that. Then I think that's quite a big tick in the well-being box.
But what I find fascinating is that I personally believe, and maybe you have a different opinion, but I personally believe that almost everyone knows that another pair of trousers won't make them happy. So it's like, from a conscious and logical point of view, they know the answer. This will not lead to happiness. But it's almost a feeling. It's almost like it's an unconscious decision. So I'm acquiring things, not knowing why, because I see that people in movies and TV shows and in social media, they have these great things, and then they seem to be very happy with them. But where I'm leading to is that it seems to me that all of these different external factors are conditioning us towards a feeling of happiness that is unconscious. We're not making a logical decision to buy these trousers to be happy. It's an unconscious decision. We unconsciously think it will make us happy. But logically, I'm pretty sure everyone knows those trousers won't make you happy.
Those trousers won't make you happy, no. But are we being manipulated into thinking that we need more stuff? Because we're not, everybody watching this, you've got a really clever audience, right? They know the truth. They know, and yet we're still busy doing the wrong things. We're still busy. Too many people burnt out, too many people chasing the wrong things, too many people eating fast food, too many people drinking too much drink, and chasing the hedonistic happiness. Yeah, the purchase, the new shoes, the Amazon delivery, woo, then we'll be happy. And actually, it is learning to be a little bit more sophisticated than that. But it almost goes against what society is trying to get you to do. So society is trying to push you towards materialism. Maybe we need to swing back towards mindfulness. I'd love to have a take, because I know that you really love mindfulness. And without going all woo-woo and sitting on a gluten-free cushion and sitting for 3 hours omming, we don't need to do that. But I do think that mindfulness is this understanding that... where do we go with it? Where do we go with mindfulness? I went to India for 3 months to learn about all this, and I came back and I would suggest that in mindfulness in its purest form is there's no past or no future, which kind of blows your mind. If you've not heard this before, this is quite mind-blowing stuff, right? So mindfulness is, in its absolute essence, is there's only the present moment. So everybody's life is lived in the present moment. It's always now o'clock. And so the past, again, in pure mindfulness, pure Buddhism really, is that the past, you can only think about the past from the present moment. So the past doesn't exist anywhere except now. And the future, when you get that holiday in 6 weeks that you booked, when you get on that holiday, that will also be a present moment. So actually what mindfulness really says is that happiness, again, controversially, happiness is already here, but where are you? Our brains are so busy being directed into the past, worrying about what happened in the past, or panicking about the future, that we are literally, our brains are time traveling to every fake moment and missing the only moment there ever is, which is the present one. And what mindfulness therefore does is bring us back to this moment. The only moment that actually is real is happiness is here, and bringing it into here. So instead of trying to get out of the moment and rushing 100 miles an hour to get out of the moment, mindfulness tries to get you into it. So slow down to the only moment there is. Notice. It's about noticing, really.
So what you're saying is that I'm trying to make a connection between mindfulness and happiness, but happiness lives in the moment. It's not in the future when I achieve this or that, or when I build up this beautiful picture and I accomplish it, or from a fantastic past and a memory. Happiness lives in the present, and that's where we need to seek it.
Yes. Well, everything lives in the present. Happiness is now. Happiness is always available to us. But I think we're back to the modern world. Well, my point is the modern world is messing with us so much that we're looking for happiness everywhere else. We're putting it off for the future, the destination addiction, or we're looking at how happy we used to be in the past, and we're literally missing now. We're missing the only moment there ever is, which is the only real one. And I think that, the link between happiness and mindfulness, it's interesting now, if you look at where mindfulness came from, which is kind of over in the East, in the China and India, they've gone massively materialistic there now. I went to India, everybody's chasing stuff. They want products, they want a motorbike, they want something. So even in the cradle of mindfulness, they're now becoming consumed by consumerism. And I think mindfulness now is showing up in the West, where we're drowning in so much stuff that we're trying to find a solution to it. And it's actually there's a body of people now who are really into mindfulness in the UK as the antidote to the busyness, the craziness that our lives have become. Just find peace in this moment, because this moment is all you've ever got.
And what would you advise me and my audience to be able to be more present?
There's lots of ways. I don't know if you've heard of the Japanese concept, Ichigo, Ichi. Ichigo, Ichi is super cool. It's so simple. It's got a history to it, if you just let me go for it. So back in the 17th century Japan, every village would have a tea ceremony. So quite famously, all the workers would meet in the village hall for this tea ceremony at certain times during the week. And Ichigo Ichi literally translates as one time only. So the thinking was, while we're all together in the village hall for this tea ceremony, it's Ichigo Ichi, it's one time only, so we're going to be fully present. Right? So yeah, there's going to be a tea ceremony at the same time next week with the same people in the same village hall, but next week is a different vibe and a different atmosphere. This tea ceremony right now, Ichigo Ichi, one time only, fully present. Now, how does that map across to where we are now? If you take that to me in my house, let's just take and then extrapolate it out to everybody. So I've been married for 3 decades now, 33 years, and I love my wife. But if we're not super careful, having breakfast with the same person for 33 years, if you're not careful, that's just breakfast. It's just such a non-event. Like she'll sit there, she'll have her white coffee, black coffee, we eat. It's just 15-minute set piece. It's totally bland and quite boring after 33 years if you're not careful. But Ichigo Ichi basically says that breakfast time with my wife today is one time only, right? And therefore, I'm going to be fully present. Now, that being cognizant of that changes everything. So instead of now being on my phone at breakfast time and she's on her phone, not anymore, not got the TV news on anymore, listening to what's going on in the world, trying to be present with that person for that 15 minutes. And what you'll find, so breakfast time tomorrow will be a different breakfast time. This breakfast time here is Ichigo Ichi, one time only, being fully present. And what I can tell you, it's really hard because I want your viewers to just put it into practice in their own lives. It's hard to describe how powerful it is because what you'll find is a connection with the person that wasn't there previously if you're scrolling. You'll find a connection with the present moment, and the whole thing comes to life instead of just being a boring set piece. So that's tea ceremonies in India, Andy having breakfast with his wife. What about like in the big wide world out there? Well, I think in business meetings, how many meetings have I been in where everybody's got their phones out, their iPad, their laptops out, and nobody's really listening to each other. We're just waiting for their turn to speak. And I think if you can be in a work situation, in a meeting situation where everybody is being fully present, you feel that. You will really feel that. I'm not saying it's easy because you've been so distracted, but you're really good at it, right? But I think it's if you can. It's like same with your kids. Back to children. If your children, you go home from work and your children's like, oh, "Can I show you this picture I've done at school?" And you're going, "Well, I've just got to do this. I've got to do my emails. I've got to cook the tea. Show me later." Ichigo Ichi says, "Show me the picture. Show me the picture," right? And what you will find there, whether it's in a meeting with your teammates, whether it's with your kid, whether it's your partner having breakfast, you'll find a connection with a human being. You will be present in your presence instead of being distracted. And the world is so good at making us absent in our presence. We're so distracted now. Ichigo Ichi, I think, is really, really the easiest way that I've found of just bringing my attention to the people in front of me.
And the simple tip to embrace Ichigo Ichi in our lives is by reminding ourselves of the uniqueness of that moment. So this is a unique breakfast. That's a unique meeting.
Beautiful. Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah, you have this way of summing things up better than I. It took me 5 minutes to explain that. That's exactly it. It isn't going to happen again like this. This is a special. This is a one-time only. Well, we're back to the present moment. Every moment is different, and this is a one-time opportunity to be present with this moment and this person. So it's super powerful because most people aren't present. Most people are so distracted, right, that they're not present. So when you are present, people notice because it's almost a superpower, I think, in the modern world.
It seems to me then that being present is a choice, which then it begs the question, is happiness a choice?
I don't think, no. Despite what Instagram tells you, I'm a bit nerdy on this, right? Happiness is an emotion, and the best you can do with happiness, you can't choose it, you can open up to it and let more in. You can open it up and you can let more happiness into your life, but you can't choose to be happy because it's an emotion. However, positivity, being positive, is not an emotion, it's an attitude, and these are quite closely related. You can choose to be positive. And what I found in my research is this conscious and deliberate choice, and the effort. There's quite often an effort involved in having a great attitude. It's easy to have a bad attitude. It's so easy to walk around with a bad attitude. But a conscious and deliberate decision and choice, as you said, to have an attitude that works in your favor, that's the biggest single thing that came out of my research. but it's a decision you have to make. Now, that it's not happiness, it's positivity. But by being more positive, more happiness should be allowed into your life. But it's not a choice to be happy, it's a choice to be positive. Technical detail, but it's important.
If someone listening to this is fully committed to become happier, to be happy in their lives, and they want to start this week, where should they start?
This week, I would start with gratitude. Just write down 10 things you really appreciate but take for granted. And actually, people will be on there, and then loads of weird stuff. But actually, that's really obvious and simple. Let me give you something that's maybe less obvious. I like Steve McDermott's point. He calls it the 4-minute rule. So if you want to be happy and if you want to be happier, you've only got to be that best version of you just for 4 minutes. This is so good, right? Because you're not going to be it all day, but the 4 minutes sets the scene. So if you can be interested in the person in front of you, like genuinely attentive, being present, being positive with a slight smile on your face just for 4 minutes, not only will you feel great, but that will transmit to the people in your meeting or the people at home. So the 4-minute rule basically means that the first four minutes of any interaction with another person becomes super important. The first 4 minutes of breakfast time, the first 4 minutes of going into the office, the first 4 minutes of a meeting, the first 4 minutes of going home to your family. If you can just bring it in within yourself to be positive just for 4 minutes, then that affects everything, because you go home, that first 4 minutes lights up the whole family. So let me give you the old and the new version of me. So the old version of me, little kids, I would go home. My habit was, how was school? And the kids would say, boring. And I would say, what did you learn? And they say, I can't remember. And that was pretty much, that was it. Day after day, I'm going home asking a terrible question. 4-minute rule changed everything, because I started to go home and say, how would the best dad in the world go through this, which is a super powerful question. So I knew the answer. I was like, what you said, it's obvious what the answer is, but I wasn't doing it. So I decided I'm going to do it. And I decided I'm going to be the best dad. So the best, and they were only little kids at the time. So I went, instead of saying, how was school? I'd say, how was school today? Was it good, fantastic, or brilliant? And I said it with real enthusiasm. How was school today? Was it good, fantastic, or brilliant? And they would go, oh, it was really good. Actually, Dad, I'll upgrade. It was brilliant. And you're in. That's you're in, right? What was brilliant about it? And then literally 4 minutes later, they're sharing the highlight of their day. And your job as a parent, tell me more. No way. You're kidding. Wow, that's amazing. 4 minutes later, you've come home, you've added some value, you've created, and that you've got to the top of the wellbeing diagram, and everything's different from there, right? It's not just 4 minutes. The 4 minutes, meal time's easier, homework's easier, bath time's easier, bedtime's easier, because you've come home and added, instead of coming home through the door, rolling your eyes, going, oh, let me tell you about my train delay, right? So even though this is obvious, the vast majority of people do the wrong first 4 minutes. They share the low light of their day with the people they love the most. And I did that for years as well. So the 4-minute rule, if you want to start today, right now, then after this podcast, just go and interact with somebody in best self mode for 4 minutes and see what happens.
And what does that look like with an adult? Because with the kid, maybe it's a slightly bit easier if you just narrow down the options for them. So let's say, going back to the initial example, I'm having breakfast with my partner, with my romantic partner, first 4 minutes of the day.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just about talking about the highlight of, well, going home from work. I mean, I think going home, I would start to share the highlight of my day. I start to ask my wife, what's the best thing that's happened today? Tell me, because she's a teacher, right? So there's loads of bad stuff. And we used to focus on that, and we'd spend 40 minutes almost having a competition to see who's had the worst day. So she's telling me all the bad stuff, and I would go, this is before I knew about positive psychology. And I'm trying to listen to her, but off she goes again. And I'll be waiting for my go. And when she paused her breath, let me tell you how bad my day's been worse than your day. We used to have a competition for about 40 minutes to see who's had the worst day. Now going home, asking, let's just share the highlight. The bad stuff, if we really need to talk about the bad stuff, we can. It's going to have happened. But actually, let's talk about the good stuff, which just gets the evening off to a better start. But breakfast time, it's the same thing. It's like, what are you looking forward to most today? Yeah. What are you excited for today? So it's just a slightly different play on words.
Positive questions.
Yeah, it's positive. I mean, it's kind of obvious, but most people don't ask. Well, most people don't talk at the breakfast table. Yeah. They scroll.
I think that's very powerful because particularly in this day and age, a lot of people, they wear stress and busyness like a badge of honor. So you ask someone, anyone,
how are you?
How are you? So busy, so stressed. I have so many things to do.
Yeah.
And that's almost like, but they say it with a bit of pride, right? Like if you tell someone, if someone asks you, how are you? And you say, I'm doing pretty well. You unconsciously think that the other person might be thinking, well, you're not doing enough, or something like that. But that's wrong. That's so wrong.
It is wrong. But again, we are, it's a zoocosis again. We think that, you said busyness is a badge of honor. How are you? Oh, keep him busy, like it's a good thing. But actually, I read a quote in fact, I put it on Twitter the other day. It was just a quote. It said, busy, 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 dead. I'm like, okay. For a lot of people, that is their life. So you just be careful. And that was my life for a long time as well. And I'm busy. I've just flown in from San Diego, but most of my life now is under control, and I'm working really hard at not being too busy. But building a business, like you're building a business, I'm building a business, running a business, there is an element of you can't not be busy because you've got things that you do want to achieve. But if you're doing your calling, we're back to your calling, you're doing your calling and I'm doing my calling. And if work doesn't feel like work and you enjoy it, then I've got no problem with being busy. But I think if we're being super busy doing the wrong things.
And what should we do when things are not going well in our lives, but we still want to maybe be happy?
Yeah, I think, except that things aren't going to go well all the time. But, life is, there are ups and there are downs. And I think positive psychology isn't, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record here. It's not about thinking you should be happy all the time. It's about acknowledging there are times when it's okay to have downtime. What positive psychology helps you do is to bounce back into that best version of you. In fact, let me just add in a story off the BBC. It always makes me laugh. I began starting keynotes with it, actually, because I think it's a really funny story, but it's true. So I'm trying to get off my phone. Right? When you go on your phone and you legitimately looking for something, and then 45 minutes later you're still there, scrolling on the feed, and it's the algorithm, and you're like, oh no, why have I done this again? So I'm not doing that anymore. But there was a BBC headline. It's about maybe 2 years ago now. I knew it was clickbait, but I had to click on it. The headline said, man joins search party looking for himself. I'm like, well, that's a weird headline, right? So I clicked on that. It took me to a story in Turkey. And I'm assuming it's the BBC, so it must be at least half true. So there's this guy who lives in a village in Turkey, and he went away for the weekend, and he didn't tell everybody he was going away. So when he came back on Sunday night, all the villagers were in the woods looking for somebody, and it looked really important. So he joined in the search, not knowing that they were looking for him, which it made me laugh. I thought it's just such a cool story, right? 2 hours he was on this search. And it made me laugh. And it just made me laugh. And then it was about 2 days later. It really made me think. I was thinking, like, metaphorically, isn't that what everybody's doing? We're going round and round in circles looking for this elusive best self. Yeah. We see it on Instagram. We know we get glimpses of what we want. Oh, that's the version of me that I want to be. And then we chase it. And by the time we've got there, it's gone. And I think it's quite elusive. We go 4,000 weeks. I think most people will die looking for this elusive best self. And I think hats off to you, what you're trying to do on this podcast, and what I'm trying to do in my keynotes is it would be really cool if the search was over. If we could actually inhabit the amazing version of us, even on a Monday morning when it's drizzling outside, that is when the search is truly over. And I think really where my work, and I think what this podcast is about, and what the whole of positive psychology really is about, is helping people be comfortable with who they are. You found yourself, that best version of you. And we're back to where we started. That's the quiet, contented version of you that doesn't really need to pursue more. It's just a little nod to appreciate of where you are.
And let's assume that we achieved that state of mind, that feeling, that long-term happiness. We found ourselves and we're happy with who we are, but perhaps most importantly with who we are not. Does that mean that then we achieved it and we're going to feel great and, accepting for the rest of our lives? Or we need to still practice these daily things that you've mentioned?
Yeah. I think the daily things, again, back in the conclusion of my PhD, is there's a word habituation. Habituation basically means that if you do anything for a certain amount of time, it starts to become normal. The effect wears off. So it's like drinking beer. The first 2 beers really good, 6 beer, 8 beer, 10 beers less good. Yeah, or the new pair of jeans. You got 5 pairs of jeans really good, 50 pairs of jeans. The effect wears off. And I think with all of these, even with gratitude, right? There's research that says that actually, if you keep being grateful and you write your gratitude list every day, after 6 months, the effect of gratitude wears off. So I think that keeping the top tips fresh. So the 4-minute rule, fantastic. The 4-minute rule, I've been doing that for about 18 years and it still works for me. But most of the things, if you do them over time, they gradually will wear off. So actually, which is, again, I'm not trying to sell your podcast for you because it's fantastic, but what you need to be doing is getting fresh top tips and trying things that are different. Yeah. So one of my big breakthroughs that I did for years, but the effect has now worn off. In terms of gratitude, I read a book on mindfulness, and it said, what you need to do is wake up in the morning being really grateful that you've not got toothache. And I thought that sounds a bit stupid, but I'll give that a go. So, and I didn't just do that once. I did that in 2008. I did that every single day for 365 days as an experiment in my head. So picture the scene, right? So waking up in the morning, 6 a.m. on a Monday. I'd rather stay in bed, but I've got responsibilities to get out of bed. So I'd wake up, hair all over the place, the alarm would go, I'd be like, oh, here we go again. But, oh, hang on a second. Ooh, fantastic. No toothache. Again, what a great start to the day. So just bear with me, right? Because not having the awareness of not having toothache puts me in a great place. So 15 seconds after waking up, I'm out of bed like a ninja. I'm going, wow, no toothache. Fantastic. So when my kids came down for breakfast, so little kids in those days, because Dad's in a good place, I've got some music on. I may be dancing around the kitchen, serving the toast with a smile. Kids are happier. They went off to primary school and absolutely smashed it. They were brilliant that year. They were happier. They were learning more. They were making good friends. They were happy because Dad was happy. I was happy because I didn't have toothache. And nobody knew because it was a game in my head. I did that every day for a year and it was amazing, right? It rewired my brain. And so the next year I thought, oh, I can't just do toothache forever. I'm getting bored with it. So next year was the kidneys. Getting out of bed, giving my kidneys a look. Oh, kidneys, still working. Thank you, guys. And if I, look down the camera and ask your viewers, when did you last thank your kidneys? Right? And probably never, not until they're not working, then we're desperate for them. And I think, therefore, that's an example of habituation. So the toothache worked for about a year, and then it started to wear off. So I changed the body part. Now I don't have to do it at all anymore because it's ingrained in my head. But keeping your top tips fresh, I think, stops them from getting stale and habituated. Yeah,
I'm loving these daily habits and tips. Do you have any others?
Oh, I could go forever. I mean, how long have we got? Have we literally?
As long as you want. Just give me the most important ones, the most effective ones.
Can I give you ones that I think that work at work and at home? Mm-hmm. So I love again, it's not really my area of research, but it's a beautiful thing called the Losada line. It might have been touched on in previous podcasts. Losada line basically says that positive and negative don't weigh the same. So what you should be is you should be 3 times more positive than you are negative in terms of how you speak. So it's not 3 to 0. So you can be negative. You can go nightmare or disaster or, oh my gosh, this is rubbish. But every time you say something negative, you should balance that with a minimum of 3 positives. So but that's just the minimum. In fact, if relationships at home go 3 to 1 the other way, they're going to end. If you look at John Gottman's research on that, if it's 3 negatives at home for every positive, that's going to struggle big time. But 3 to 1 positive to negative is the minimum that you need for a relationship to gain any traction, right? But we're not trying to be minimum, we're trying to be maximum on this podcast. So if you listen to high performance teams in the workplace, their ratio is 6 to 1. So in terms of positive psychology, what you should be is, listen back to yourself, you should be 6 times more positive than you are negative. So that if I was let's take it into a team. So if I was working in the team, I could hear 6 bits of praise, 6 bits of encouragement, 6 bits of good news, 6 thank yous, 6 catching a work colleague doing something well and telling them. For every negative, I'd be fairly sure that team is buzzing, got some energy. But if you got kids or grandkids, then this is, again, Carol Dweck's research really, is the ratio is around 8 to 1 at home, which is quite big. It's a big number, right? So 8 to 1. So if I was in your house and I could hear, let me give you an example. So if your child is doing their homework at the kitchen table and you've not asked them to, they're just doing it out of their own volition, then what you've got to do as a parent or grandparent is just notice. You just walk past and you go, oh my gosh, you're doing your homework. Wow. I've not even asked you to do that. That is so helpful. Thank you for making my day. It doesn't take 5 minutes. It takes 5 seconds. You've noticed and you've gone. The thing is, the child knows that you've noticed. It's such a small win. And if I was in your house, so if in your team it's 6 to 1, if I was in your house, I could hear 8 bits of love, 8 bits of caring, 8 thank yous, 8 thanks for not bringing your phone to the tea table, thanks for playing so nicely with your little sister, thanks for being so lovely with your grandma. If I could just hear that in your home environment, then your home will also be flourishing as well. So I think it's just such a simple thing. I think the 4-minute rule, not having toothache, and the 6 to 1, 8 to 1 ratio, I think are really easy. They don't cost anything. They just require you to be put a little bit of effort into putting those into practice.
Do you have any others? I'm really loving these tips.
Let me give you something that it's maybe sometimes I use in a keynote, but I think it's funny, but really not funny. I think it's quite serious. There's something called Enclothed Cognition. I'm not going to bore you with what that actually means, but basically this is what it's all about. And it's a tip for everybody watching this about their underwear. Okay, because after you've listened to this podcast, what I want you to do is go upstairs to your bedroom. I want you to open your underwear drawer. And in that underwear drawer, there'll be some knickers or pants that you don't really... Emergency underwear, you know what I mean? Last resort pants. Girls and guys, we've got them, yeah? Bad pants. Either you're out of shape or the pants are out of shape. But they don't deserve to be worn, but they're still in your drawer. So you open the drawer, there's half a dozen pairs of bad underwear. I want everybody watching this, listening to this, that underwear is gone from your life. You're going to put it in the bin, you're going to burn it, you're going to bury it in the garden. You're never going to wear those knickers again, right? Then tomorrow morning... Going to get dressed for work, you're going to get showered, get dressed for work, you're going to open your underwear drawer, and in that drawer tomorrow there will also be your special underwear. And I want everybody watching this, listening to this podcast, wearing their special underwear for work tomorrow, right? And what that should mean is that if it was in London, I should see you walking across London with a little bit of a spring in your step, a little bit of a swagger, because you knew you got your best underwear. Now, that sounds like some sort of cheap gag. It's not a joke. It's not even a joke, because we take you back to where we started earlier in the podcast, is that what we find in terms of that happiness rainbow and destination addiction, what people do is they end up reserving their happiness for a special occasion. I'll be happy at the weekend. Yeah. I'll be happy on a night out. I'll be happy on holiday. I'll be happy when I retire. And in the same way, we end up reserving our special underwear for a special occasion, whereas really link it all back to that 4,000 weeks, that special thing we have called life. Nobody gets out alive. So therefore, if you've only got 4,000 weeks, it seems to me, if life is the ultimate special occasion, which I believe it to be, then maybe the ultimate top happiness tip ever is to quit waiting.
I really love particularly this last one, because I've done something very similar years ago. So many years ago, I used to wear my special clothes for special occasions. Yeah. And then my less nice or less special clothes every single day. And then one day I woke up and I felt like, God damn it, like that means that today is not special. Indeed. So it's not as important as that future day, that it may never arrive also, right? Yeah. That future day. And how many of those future special occasions will I have? I don't know, 20, 30, my whole life? Yeah. If you're lucky, a bit more. But that means that my whole life is narrowed down to those very few moments. What about everything else? And I changed it. I'm not saying for everyone to go shopping and just buy the nice things, to wear the nice things every single day. But it was just not about... I didn't buy more. I was just wearing more of the things that I was just keeping for the good days.
Fantastic. Well, that's exactly the same point. You've done it again. You've summarized my point again to put it into real language. But whether it's your underwear or whatever it is you're wearing, I think what I said at the start is enclothed cognition actually means that when you wear, it's like when a doctor puts a white coat on, they feel like a doctor. It's what you wear affects how you behave. So it makes perfect sense to wear your best stuff more of the time. Yeah, because like, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? Especially if every day literally is a special occasion, because there will be people, who don't survive today. So the fact is, I'm 60 years old. If I can wake up in the morning, and there's no cough in there. You know what I mean? I'm still alive. I'm here. Yeah. In fact, my little kids wake up and they go, well, I've got another day. And I think we forget how valuable life is. Yeah. So treat every day like a special occasion.
100%.
Because it is.
There's this brings me to an example that I've discussed with a dopamine expert that I think it very much relates to happiness. We draw a lot of dopamine from alcohol, and almost, a lot of people, they only drink on the weekends, right? They tend or try not to drink during the week, which means the following, that if you are naturally cutting down on alcohol because that's healthy for you, and you're only doing it on the weekends, you're getting a dopamine spike on the weekends, which means you have a dopamine low during the week, which by default, it means, or by design, you're going to be less happy during the week.
Yes.
And we keep doing this over and over again. So if we're doing a Tuesday dinner with a friend, if we get to do that, versus a Friday dinner with a friend, unconsciously we're thinking that the Tuesday one is less relevant, less important, less fun. And on Friday is going to be fantastic. So we were wasting that dinner. We're wasting that Tuesday.
We are. But how many? It makes me laugh now. But how many Tuesdays have I wasted in the past? The old version of me, I didn't know all the stuff I've spoken about today hadn't crossed my mind. I was going through my life. I was perfectly okay. I was fine. But fine seems quite a low bar. If you've only got 4,000 weeks, then fine is a very low bar. So I think it's breaking out of this curse of mediocrity into the extraordinary version of you, that it's perfectly possible to learn these habits and learn these behaviors and be that amazing version of you more often. Then I think there's a little bit of effort involved, but the payback is times a million.
Andy, my last question is a bit of a tradition now that we have on the show. And it's my favorite question regardless of who I am talking to. Because I guess you'll see now why. If you had to compress all your knowledge into one essential piece of advice that we must implement in our daily lives, what would it be?
Well, all the stuff that I've mentioned, plus I think I'll give you a personal favourite of mine. Are you a hugger? Do you like a hug?
Yep.
Or not? Because I'm not, or at least I wasn't until I learned this. So your audience will be split. There'll be the huggers and the non-huggers. I love the idea that the average hug, if you are a huggy person, the average hug lasts 2.1 seconds. Okay, so if you watch huggy people, it will be like 1, 2, finished, right? Which is it's better than nothing. But for the love to transfer between two people, a hug needs to last 7 seconds or longer, right? Now, for the non-huggers, that's, whoa, this is just uncomfortable. And I'm not talking about strangers in the car park. We're back to the 12 people that you know in your life, your Dunbar's number. So even if you're a non-hugger, my top tip would be to actually hug the people you love, the people closest to you, your 12 people, for 7 seconds or longer. And the beauty of that is that's an I love you hug. So you don't have to say I love you. A hug is just 7 seconds is just long enough for the person to instinctively, intuitively know that you love them. And obviously, don't count out loud. That's what I learned. If you're like 1, 2, that's going to kill it. And also, they do start wriggling on about 4, trying to get away. But just seriously, without any humour, just bring your loved ones in for 7 seconds. I can't give you a top tip that would be create more oxytocin than that across the planet. And how many viewers do you get of your podcast? We could create a real oxytocin blast with 7-second hugs across the world here today. Yeah?
Andy, I really, really, really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you so much for coming onto the show. As we were discussing earlier, I think we need more doctors like you, because I believe that everyone's ultimate goal in life, their purpose in life, is to find meaning and happiness.
Yeah.
That's it. Nothing else. Everything else is to contribute to these two things, right?
Yes,
they're contributing factors.
Happiness is the goal of all your other goals. Yeah. So I agree. But I think it's what the beauty of positive psychology, the beauty of what I know is that most of it is so simple. We already know it, but we're not doing it. So this podcast is a nudge towards taking action.
Exactly. So I'm very thankful, because this episode, I'm hopeful that this episode will bring nothing more than consciousness, which is what we need towards happiness. What is it? What is it not? Where can we draw it from? And where we can't, which is what we all need. So thank you. And I think we should do this again, maybe in a year from now. I think we should do this almost like an annual thing, because people need to hear this more often.
Anytime. So thank you for having me.
Thank you.